Well, welcome to the Fireside Chat with Peter Snell. This is Peter Snell, obviously your host, and today we are having a conversation with my good friend Russ Morgan. So, Russ, how you doing, man?
Good, Peter, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm so excited for the conversation.
Hey, bro, me too. So, hey, look, I'm excited. I mean, I know we talk a lot, we're friends and whatnot, but I'm pretty stoked about learning a little bit about your story today. And we got some kind of cool topics to talk about. So just for our listeners, our audience, the framework we like to follow is just getting some story out of your background and tell us a little bit about yourself. And then we talk about maybe one big thing that you're working on, and then we'll hit the market through your perspective, what's going on in your professional world with your work, and then there might be some energy conversation in there, obviously. And this is that moment where I'll mention this is sponsored by Petrovibe. So anyway, man, glad you're here. Hey, tell me, when you think about your story going all the way back, and you can like look into your childhood or wherever you want to go, but tell us a little bit about how Russ became Russ, and maybe there's an inflection point story or two back in your timeline that you'd like to share that kind of was instrumental in making you who you are?
Yeah. Well, a couple things as I look back, I think of being an athlete and that created this competitive nature in me. And as a former athlete yourself, I know you know that we have goals, we strive for those goals, we work hard, but we also realize the value of team and being able to leverage other people's gifts. So that's definitely a point I look back and I say, man, what's helped me become successful is because of that. Secondly, it's also the thought process that I came from a home that didn't have a whole lot of income. My father was a general contractor. My mother was a school teacher. They got divorced when I was like in the first grade. So I never had a whole lot of money, but I watched people work really hard and valued every dollar that they received. And I think that that's a point of me saying, "Hey, I knew I had to work hard for it, but also at the same time, it pushed me to say, how can I use my brain to try to create something?" Because I watched my father use his body and like working constantly, and I was with him. He'd pick me up at 6:30 on a Saturday and Sunday morning to go to a job site with him, and early on in my life, I was like, I do not want to do this. I've got to figure out a way to use my brain to create income streams. So I think that those were two big kind of influential points in my life that have helped me kind of get closer to where I am today.
Awesome, awesome. So now your siblings, like, what's your story with brothers and sisters? I mean, I don't actually know. So
Yeah.
as much time as we've been spending, I got a little bit of knowledge there, but what was that like living with brothers and sisters? Where were you in the order, and like any interesting stories related to a brother fist fight with the neighbor down the street, or
Man, I sure there's a lot more stories than I want to tell because thankfully for us, social media and all the things that are recorded today were recorded.
weren't on then, right? I know.
I had one older sister, so she's 6 years older than I, and ultimately she helped raise me a lot because my mother, being single mom, was having to work a bunch to try to provide for us, and so my older sister was the one kind of dragging me around. And for better for worse, sometimes, I got exposed to
Yeah.
things probably way earlier than I should have as a result of that. But she also, showed me the ropes. And, I have a great relationship with her to this day. She and I have a very similar profile as far as, culture index and the way we see the world. But also, I think it just the two of us having to figure it out is also just being challenged early on to learn how to do things and not, being spoon fed anything in life. It was always, if you want something, you're going to have to do it. You want dinner, you have to make it for yourself, right? Like,
Uh,
if you want to have money for the weekend, you better go find a job to go do it so that you can have it.
Interesting. Okay, that's very cool. So when you think about that experience, how did school and your experience in school shape your view on education and just life in general? Like as you came through high school and then went into college, what was that like? I know you're a Tiger, so
I'm an Auburn Tiger. That's
pretty
right.
excited Final
Excited right now.
Four. So
Yeah, I was not really, you know, academically inclined, if you will. Like I was always there for the party and for the enjoyment of being around others. It wasn't until my my fourth year in college. I'm wrapping up. I changed major for the third time, And I'm sitting there talking to a counselor, and she said, if you go take two classes this summer and then you get after it next year, you graduate. And I was like, really? And that's when everything kind of clicked for me. Obviously I learned the independent work that comes with school, right? Like, you have to learn how to study on your own and to, overcome adversity. But
Yeah.
for me, schooling was not the thing. I've read way more books. I mean, 100 times more books than I ever read in school since I've been out of school, which is the opposite of most people. I think they say that the average male at least will read one book after they leave college, and
Wow.
that's a
I didn't
pretty
know
sad. Yeah,
one book.
that's what the statistic I read once said, and I was like, wow, that's pretty sad.
I
Well,
read more than one, but I don't read a lot. So I mean, I read a lot, just not a lot of books.
So I wanted to figure out how to build wealth, and all of that came after the fact because I didn't know what to do. I went to college and I got this management degree that didn't really mean anything. So I got a job managing rental car places. I worked for Enterprise Rent a Car for 4 years, and I, it taught me a lot about business, like how to run a business, how to manage an operation, manage people. And then that kind of said, hey, well, what if I could get into the financial markets? What would that look like? And that's where I ultimately, got my first entree into what I'm sort of doing today. It's obviously evolved significantly, but it was, I wanted to learn something new. And so for me, it was always go get a job to learn how to do the thing. And I'm a hands-on person. I have to experience it to understand it. So the things that I learned in college, I took a lot of finance classes in college, but I didn't really understand it because I had never been around it, never experienced it before, right? The commodities markets and those stock markets and things like that were just not a conversation piece at our dinner table. It wasn't
Right.
until I started living it and experiencing it and losing money doing those things that I really started to understand what all of that really meant.
So that's interesting. And I do want to come back to the work path at some point. One of the things I know about you is you have a pretty interesting story about how you and your wife met. And I was curious if you could sort of weave that story into, because she's a pretty amazing person. So what's the storyline there as it relates to school and as you were kind of matriculating through that part of your life?
Yeah, so I'm at Auburn University and I go potluck and I get this, three roommates. One of them plays golf for Auburn. One of them is just some random guy. And the third guy played tennis at Auburn and he and I hit it off pretty well. So much so that we decided to travel Europe as he played tennis across money tournaments in France. And I traveled with him and two other guys for, a month or so across France, got to experience a lot of cool stuff and stayed very cheaply since we would stay in people's homes and at these
Yeah.
clubs and things as they're playing. Well, he and I decided to live together a second year, and that year his sister, who lived in Waco, Texas, decided to move over to Auburn, Alabama to be with her brother, and she'd come and hang out with us all the time. And he ended up graduating at the end of the winter quarter and moved off to take a tennis pro job. And he left me to watch after her. Well, one thing led to another. We built from a friendship to a romantic relationship. And a number of years later, got married and have been married now 23 years.
Nice. Very good. Very good. So, and I think one of the things you talked about with your, I don't know, one of the things I love about spending time with you, we're in Wealth Without Wall Street. That is that the name of our mastermind, Wealth Without Wall Street? I don't
Passive
even
income
know.
mastermind. Yeah.
Passive income mastermind. Oh yeah. Should we get into the passive income difference of opinion there? I don't know. So for our audience, just so you know, there's a spirited debate between Russ and myself about the definition of passive income. I have a very probably a unique view. I don't know if it's unique, but it's certainly different than the term on passive income. But anyway, I'll set that aside for now because I am curious. Russ and I are in the passive income mastermind together. That's how we've actually really started to get to know each other a lot better. Spending time just, I don't know, talk about the mastermind because there's something about your family that I think is a really interesting story there. And I think I'm jumping ahead probably, but let's talk about the mastermind and maybe you could give a little context as to sort of the business that led to this and then the mastermind itself. Because I want to get to your story about your daughter because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
That was a lot.
people ask a lot about masterminds, like why are you in masterminds? Why do you participate in those? And we've all heard the analogy that we are the sum of the five people we spend the most time with. And the question has been asked is, well, if the people you spend the most time with are not trying to accomplish or achieve the things that you aspire to accomplish and achieve, how are you ever going to level up? Does that mean you have to give up your best friends, the people that you hang out with? And I don't think that that's the case, right? But the beauty of opportunities that we have is that we might be able to, if we have these aspirations to accomplish things that maybe our friends are, people we surround ourselves with on a normal basis aren't trying to accomplish. What if we can get into a room with other people who are both trying to aspire to accomplish the same thing, but even more importantly, who are already accomplishing the things that we aspire to accomplish? So then we can, compress or collapse the time that it would take us to get there and have the ability to ask questions. And, we're going to invest time and money somewhere. How can we get the highest ROI on that? And so masterminds for me have been an opportunity for me to make, amazing friendships like, you and I, and the things that you and I have been able to do together. The ability to ask a question of someone in a situation that could immediately enhance what I'm trying to do or prevent me from making a huge mistake, right? Like that's
Yep,
I
yep.
love that board of advisors opportunity we have within our groups. And I think, it's exposure, right? Like it's accountability, it's exposure. You and I have been exposed to, all sort of different opportunities and ideas, some of which we're like, I don't want to do that. Well, good. We get to check it off the list because we got exposed to it and in a safe environment. But also there's things that we wouldn't have probably done on our own that as a result of being in this group, being, kind of force fed this information, it's leveled us up in areas that's helping us in our businesses. I think it's helping us in our relationships with our families, and obviously being able to expand friendships across state lines, right? Like a lot of masterminds tend to have people from all over the place with very eclectic backgrounds that I think just makes life even more special.
Eclectic indeed. I think that's a good that's a good description. I mean, you, think about me, Sharon. I mean, go down the list of JB, who
Yeah.
is going to be on this podcast too. I mean, JB's maybe the happiest guy I've ever met in my life. And the guy is, I mean, he used to diffuse like weapons, live munition in the theater of war, and the happiest guy I've ever met. Seriously.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I love it. I mean, it's been one of the greatest blessings in my life. So there was a road to get to the mastermind. So we'll backtrack a little bit because I know I tried to pack too much into one question, but that's all right. I appreciated you stayed focused. Talk to me about the road to the IBC work that you're doing and the honestly the amazing strategy that you've taken, and I'd be interested also. I think our audience would be interested in your vision for what you're trying to accomplish with the business, which I don't know that everybody knows about, but I think it's inspiring. It absolutely inspired me. There's scale in it. There's strategy. There's grit. There's all kinds of things. And I think the mastermind, there's a relationship there, but I think stepping back and looking at how that formulated, talk a little bit about your road to that and where you are now.
Yeah, our big mission is we want to help entrepreneurs have greater impact. And we believe people have greater impact when they're financially free. Because too often times, no matter how much money someone's making, there's an opportunity for stress from finances to limit their viewpoint, right? Like I've heard it said in a business that somebody has to have their head up looking out into the future, because if the leader has their head down, then they're going to run into things and problems all the time. And I think that we have that in our lives, that we oftentimes, if we're not financially free or feel financially free, then we tend to not look up and be able to see others and to be able to impact others. Some people have this, hey, I want to get out of my job. I want to get out of this career. I don't like where I'm at. I get that. But most of the time, I meet people that really love what they do. Like I know you love what you do. You're so passionate about it. Nobody talks to you and doesn't feel that your passion for what you're doing and how you're doing it and the interesting way in which you're doing it. And I want to be able to help people that have more of that and be able to help more people, right? And so the goal for us is helping people see that financial freedom happens when they have more income streams. I'm going to say the word passive income. I know that you don't like that term, but there's nothing that's truly passive. There's things that we have to actively get to work to be able to create the money. We have to, if it were to be active for passive for us, has to be active for somebody else. But also we have to be active enough to be able to inspect what we expect if we hand it to someone else.
Thank you for that definition, by the way. Well stated. Still fits within the passive income.
Yeah, they need to have more passive income than they have monthly expenses. And I didn't develop that for a while. So my first 4 years of my career as a financial advisor, I was actually a certified financial planner, was
Mm,
separating people from their money, meaning I was getting them to give me the money and saying, I'll give it back to you never, right? Like, because that's how
yeah.
financial advisors work, right? You make money off the management fees. And so if I give it to you, I can't make money off of it. And there's this balance that always happens there. Well, in 2008, when the markets crashed and I wasn't the financial expert I thought I was,
Mm.
I felt really poor about that situation. I thought about all the conversations where people are asking me, what's going on with the markets? Do you think we should change? Well, and I know we're going to have that conversation maybe today. What do we feel like the markets are today? And by the way, all of our crystal balls are broken, but there's some, we can have some e- experience opinions.
Right.
Well, I remember conversations in 2008 where people are asking me, hey, do you think I should get out? I'm listening to all of this stuff. I'm listening to this person talk, this person talk. I don't feel good about it. Well, I couldn't, right? I mean, my job was to be one, optimistic, but two, like if they take the money out of the market, then I don't get paid. Like
Right.
there's this ethical dilemma that exists in that world. And for better or for worse, that's where I was. And when the markets crashed, I was like, man, I don't like this. I'm a guy who likes to be in control. I think most people are, but they just don't know how to be in control. And so I went searching, and I was at an event in Orlando, Florida, and I met this 70-year-old economist. His name was Nelson Nash, and he was teaching on this just crazy idea of how you could become your own banker. And I'd heard it a number of times, but up to that point, I didn't have a problem, so I didn't need to solve anything, right? Nothing was
Yeah.
broken, in my opinion, and so I didn't need any fixes. But at this point, when I was palm to the sky saying, "What am I supposed to do?" and all the mentors that I had up to that point didn't know what to do either, I hear his message, and ultimately he was saying that the number one obstacle for someone becoming financially free is lack of access to cash. It's not that they don't have money, they don't have access to money. They put it in places they can't touch, like their IRAs. They put it in business equity, they put it in home equity, things that
Mm.
it's good, not bad things, but the money
Right.
that they couldn't touch. So when opportunities find cash, unfortunately, they didn't have cash. So opportunities found someone else's cash. And that really sent me on this path to saying, how can I do this? And I had a great example early on. And my wife was starting a dental practice at that time. My father-in-law had all this cash. He was sitting on it in checking accounts because he was terrified of putting it back in the markets because we had just had some stop losses that kicked all this cash out. And my wife took a $700,000 loan from Bank of America for a dental practice. And I read this book about how the banks just take your cash and they lend it out to other people. They pay you pennies on your dollars, and they make all the spread. And I told my father-in-law, I said, why don't we take your cash, pay off Bank of America, have her start paying you $7,500 a month? He said, is that legal? I said, absolutely, it's legal. He said, what would I do with the cash? I said, why don't we buy an insurance policy on her life, guarantees that you get it back, and we'll have a better place to store it than in your checking account. And he goes, oh, wow, I never heard that before. And that was the impetus to me starting this concept of infinite banking and applying it in our life. And it's just fast forward now 15 years. And, we've built up this family banking system where we go to it, we borrow against it for all the things we're using. It's allowed us to build passive income streams that, my business partner and I, as you know, we publish every single month. And last year we averaged a little over 50,000 a month in passive income from all those items. And that helps us, I think, have greater impact as a result.
That's awesome. And how about your daughter? I mean, some of the things that you've learned on this journey, you've got a pretty interesting story about what's going on with her. Can you talk a little bit about that story? 'Cause you're talking about impact, and
Yeah.
I mean, who do we want to impact any more than our kids and our wives?
Well, I have three daughters. My I think as entrepreneurs, we always are trying to figure out how do we teach our kids the things that we've learned and help them avoid the things that we've learned. Both. My oldest daughter, we've tried a number of things in the, investing, quote unquote passive income space. One of the first things we did is we started a short-term rental business for her because she wanted a car when she was turning 16. And I didn't want to just take cash out of her life insurance cash values and just go pay cash for it. I wanted to teach her the value of money. So I gave her options, and she ended up deciding to take cash and actually buy furniture for a short-term rental business and turn the cash flow that the short-term rental business that was being operated by we had hired somebody to run the business for us. And after paying him, she got cash flow back. And so that cash flow she used then to help make the payment for her car. And that was a great, start for her to see it. Then we were able to, expand it. And we decided, oh man, hospitality works so well in this business. Why don't we take it over here to Turo? We're renting out houses to people. Why don't we start
Right.
renting out cars to people? That strategy didn't work out so well. That was one of those, looking back on it, it was like we didn't know what we didn't know. We bought luxury cars when we should have bought economy cars. We had greater depreciation. We were way more involved in it because we didn't have an operator. So that was one of those we decided probably shouldn't do. Now,
So the lesson there is Camry, not Lamborghini. Is that
I would even say like Ford Escort
okay?
over. We
Okay.
bought an Audi A5, it's just a
Mhm.
little sports car, 50, $60,000 car, really nice little car, but the depreciation on those are, enormous.
Awful.
You
Yeah.
can't make the cash back. Like you think you're cash flow positive until you realize how fast you're depreciating the car. And it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And we bought a brand new truck, and we thought that that would be just like a run around town kind of thing. No, most people that rented our truck decided to take it out of state almost every single time. Most of the time, it came back full of pot smoke and everything else. So like
Mm.
it'd be sitting idle for 2 days. We were trying to aerate all the smoke out of it. So yeah, that definitely not the idea. Get something that you don't care about. Like I cared more about those items. I was like, they come back and hurt my heart as compared to if you had like a little Nissan Sentra or something like that. You really don't
Yeah.
care what happens to it.
Right.
My business partner has figured that out and has had some success. The next thing we've started, my 15-year-old daughter now, we're doing a vending machine business with her. So she's got a vending machine, and when I say vending machine, most people think of the thing you put coins in. It's got like the little wire frame, push thing after you push the buttons, and then you try to not catch your watch in the little catch guard as you're getting your candy bar at the bottom. This is like you put your credit card on the door. It's like a refrigerator. You open the door, you can pick from the 40 items in it right off the shelf,
Nice.
and whatever you take, the AI cameras read and immediately charges your card. And this has been a fantastic little idea for her to start learning supply and demand, for her to start doing some inventory management. We're starting to build some little cash flow off of it because we make about 50, 60% margins on all the products we have. And so she's actually expanding that business. So we're looking
Wow.
to, get another maybe like 10 little vending machines across town this year. And that's a cool little thing. But for her, she's starting to think about, okay, I'm going to need a car here in less than a year. How am I going to pay for it? So same concept of here, you've got cash values in your life insurance. So let's use it to buy a machine, get the cash flow from the machine. Then you can use that to pay for your liabilities.
Man, that's a new update because last time we talked about it has been a while, and I think we were still rampant at the time. So that's a pretty awesome growth story. 50 to 60% margins, and she's looking to expand. Cool. And it's the AI. Like this is modern vending.
Yeah, when the vending opportunity and the beauty of this is like I keep saying, like whenever we reach out to somebody and they're saying, "Oh, well, we already have a vendor in here," I'm like, "Okay, do you have the modern machines or it's kind of the old Coke machines?" They're like, "Oh, it's the old Coke machine." Oh, cool. We're actually looking to acquire some of these routes. Do you mind connecting us to those people? Because just like in lots of different investing, there's value add, right? You go in and you add new technology, you add things that allows you to make more money. Well, like these old school Coke machines and old school like candy machines or whatever, like if they've already got the route, you can go buy the route and then you just dust those machines and put a
Yep.
new refrigerator, one of these like, AI type thing, you increase revenue 150% immediately. Like it's
Wow.
crazy because our average transaction is like $5.65. Because when
Oh
you
my
open
gosh.
when you open the refrigerator, the chances of you just getting one item are really small. And
Right.
when it's a refrigerator, the sizes of things can be various, right? So now we
Right.
can sell the 24 ounce Monster, energy drink,
Man,
or the the big pack of beef jerkies or whatever the
right,
things are. You can sell a lot more stuff because you're not limited by something like little small. Everything has to be the same size.
right. With the wheel behind it, pushing it out,
Exactly.
getting
Yeah.
stuck and all that. So
Yeah.
I'm having a small moment of a nightmare going back to the 80s because that's how all that stuff worked in my time. But well, I'll tell you what, that's a pretty good transition. Well, let's take a little bit of a left turn. I'm interested in you and I share a faith in Christ together. I'm very interested in how you came to know Christ and how that has how following Him has been instrumental in your life and what it means to you.
Yeah, man, it's so good that you asked that question. I love that. I I had my mother praying for me for a long time. I told you the story about going across Europe, and I would unroll my shirts. My mom packed my whole, like, this big huge backpack. I took and I backpacked across Europe, and like throughout the whole time, I'd randomly, get a new pair of shorts or shirt out, and this little passage of scripture would fall out. Like, she had written scripture throughout all the thing, and so there's like 20 of them. And she prayed for me for a long time. And I was walking, I was wandering, right? I was lost as I could be. And we had our first daughter, and my wife and I, neither one of us had really grown up going to church. We'd gone to some church, but never, like, definitely didn't have a relationship. If you asked me, was I a believer, I would have said yes, but I didn't know what that meant.
Sure.
And we decided we're having this daughter. We should probably, do the right, ethical thing as parents with, go to church, whatever. Didn't know what it was, didn't know where we are going. And it's crazy because I had grown up in a Methodist, like, had a Methodist church we would go to from time to time. She'd go into a Baptist church from time to time. And somehow we decided the blend of that was Presbyterian, which is a laughable thing now, knowing. We had no idea, right? We had literally no
Uh,
idea. I mean, but that was just guys just humoring this, right?
uh,
And as my pastor would say, he died a couple years ago, but he would often say, hey, if you're visiting, you're not Presbyterian, don't worry. You don't have to be Presbyterian to go to heaven, but I wouldn't chance it. You'll just have to convert later.
uh,
So, but yeah, we actually went through became members of the church. And I truly was a non-believer at that time. Like, I had no relationship. And I'm at this new members luncheon, and there's an older guy that had been with the church since its beginning, and he's telling his testimony. And as he's breaking down his testimony, it was exactly what I was experiencing. He was talking about how, they're going around, they're having this prayer meeting, and everybody's praying, and he is just terrified because it's going one to the next. And he's like waiting for his turn, and he's thinking, what am I going to say? I have no idea what I'm going to say. And I thought the same thing. I was like, boy, if they asked me to pray right now, I have no idea what I would say. And he talked about, so he prayed out loud, God, I don't really know what all this is about. I appreciate what these guys are saying. I would like to have more of that in my life. And he said, then everybody just kept praying, went around and prayed for him, and how he went home and just got on his knees and prayed to God. And all of everything he was sharing, I was experiencing. I told my wife. So that was the moment in which I came to Christ. And that's been 19 years ago now. And it's, yeah, obviously my worldview has completely been shaped through the lens of how am I supposed to act in faith and response to his calling in my life, and how we treat people, and the way that we run our companies, and just being open and honest that I am fallen, I'm a sinner, saved by grace, and just loving one another as he's called us to do.
yeah, love it, man. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's in the end, that's what we have. So, I mean, and that's one of the things I think I don't know, you and I got to be friends quickly and easily for I'm not even sure what it is. I haven't ever necessarily been able to put a finger on it. I think we just sort of bump into each other a little intentionally, but it just seems to work really well. But that's one thing that I don't know. That's one of the things I love about you, man. So it's the
Mhm.
most important thing, and it's going to be what we have left at the end. But that's one of the things I like about how your mind works. You and Joey. I mean, you both. Joey's very bold about his faith in Christ, and Joey is Russ's partner, by the way. And so, and they're a fascinating dynamic. Man, if we had time to talk about the two of you together, I mean, that is some kind of brotherhood that it's unique. But anyway, so I love that about you guys because it does come through in the things that you do, and it's authentic, it's organic, and you guys also aren't afraid to be challenged and pushed and man, that's one of the reasons I think that bleeds through in the mastermind personally. So I know we weren't doing a survey today, but you
Thank
just
you.
got one. So I better stay and keep paying my dues. That's
Yeah,
what I am.
please.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I'll see you in 3 weeks anyway. So let's the things we wanted to cover was like a big thing. So what one big thing are you, and this could be personal, it could be business, really could be anything, but a dream, maybe it's something you want to do, but what's one big thing that you're either working on or want to work on right now that's sort of top of mind for you?
Yeah, you mentioned 3 weeks, so I'll bring this one up. We built a lake house that was finished almost a year ago, and we started this project in our mind as about 50% of what it became. And anybody who's ever built a home that realizes how quickly things expand. And as we started building right after COVID and the prices of lumber and everything just skyrocketed, well, it became way bigger than what we had ever would have anticipated. And, I've been feeling, as a steward of my money that I'm not been stewarding that money well, given the fact that I have this home that's so much bigger than it should be for it to be a second home, a place you can only go to maybe 20 or 30% of the time. And somebody came to me a couple months back and said, "Hey, have you ever considered doing like a fractional ownership?" And I didn't really understand what they meant. And there was a company out there, I think called Picasso, that was actually had really done this. And these are like former executives at Zillow who started that company. And the idea was, how does people who want access to luxury second homes, who doesn't want to pay 100% of the money for them because they're only going to spend 10% of the time at them, how do they get access to this without some sort of fractional ownership? And it really, intrigued me to go down this road. So I have been building this spreadsheet, and I'm starting to present it to some people I know who wanted a lake home, but for the same reasons that most people don't get one, because they don't want to spend all the money to only be there a portion of the time. And I've actually built this out because my goal is, as my business partner and I are building a number of businesses, we have an exit in place here in the next 3 to 5 years where, financially having something, exorbitant like this probably wouldn't be that big of an issue. And my timing in life, where most of my kids will be out of the house, I'll probably, maybe even transition to live into a place like this full time. And so I've been putting together a spreadsheet of how I'm showing some people who could have a third ownership in this extraordinary house. And actually, I've been doing the math to say, hey, I know you're going to have to put up money up front. You're going to pay money throughout the time, and I'm going to use my relationships with my former short-term rental operator to manage the whole thing. So that way, we're not dealing with all the calendar and the pool needs to be clean, or the ice machine broke or whatever. Have somebody else deal with that, right? Keep friendships, and let take frustrations out on people you pay. And but also by doing this, I've looked at the math. It's pretty crazy that I believe, if we have a decent level of appreciation over the next 5 years or so, that I
Yeah.
might be able to buy them out and them actually get and recoup all the money and potentially even more than what they put into it over that 5 year window. And I think that's a pretty compelling thing, because I've shared in the past this idea of having like a 401 lake house as compared to a 401k. And most
Yeah.
people don't know what I mean by that, but this guy showed me this idea. He said most people put money into qualified plans, IRAs, 401ks, whatever they are, and they do it for the immediate tax deduction and the tax deferral growth. And he says, but if you had a lake house, you had a beach home or whatever, you get the same thing, right? You get the interest deduction on the mortgage and you get the tax deferral on the growth. He said most people though, they're saying, oh, well, the market's going to do pretty good. The real estate markets tends to do pretty good. He said, but think about the time. Like for the person who has this qualified plan, no matter what they've invested in, the best thing they can do is stick their arm around their kid and show them their statement about how good everything is. He said, compared to at my beach home or my lake home, he said, I can put my arm around them, actually sitting on the couch, looking out over the water, and we'll have pictures and memories of those moments forever. And then
Yeah,
he
you
said,
can.
yeah, exactly. That's not something you can do. And he said, think about the differences. And he said, with the IRA, for those people who are not 59 and a half, they're locked out. They're locked out until 59 and a half before they can touch the money. He said, but yet I got keys. I could go to my place anytime I want to. And he
Yeah.
said, also think about whenever you go to sell it, What's the differences? With the IRA, you're going to have to pay full ordinary income tax, as compared to with the beach home or the lake home, it's subject to capital gains. And if you die, you're going to have to pay ordinary income tax, or your heirs will for the IRA. But with the current rules and tax laws, if you pass it down to your heirs, your home, they can get a step up in basis. So all the gain becomes tax free. He said, think about the differences between the two. Which one of those would you rather have? And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with people. Here's your 401 lake house, and you may have the opportunity to get all of the money you put in it back. But what you will always keep will be the memories, the pictures, and all the things that you got to experience throughout it that maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think that's just one of many ideas. Obviously, it's not a wealth building strategy, it's a lifestyle strategy, but that's what I'm working on right now.
Well, but it is interesting because experiences are worth something, and there is wealth in relationships. If I know that may seem a little cliche, but I don't think so. If I mean, you get to be my age anyway, and you know the doorway is a lot closer. And so
Right.
I think about those things, relationships. I mean, it's one of the reasons I started this business because this is what I want to do. There's a lot of things I could do, but this is what I want to do. And so, like I said, you can't hug a 401k or an IRA, but you could definitely, you got keys. I love that. You got keys. I mean, and that's the other thing. I'm not a fan of retirement. I don't see anywhere in scripture that says make a bunch of money and go play golf. Now, I'm not saying golf's bad. I'm not saying that having more choices when you're older regarding work isn't good. I love one of the reasons I love the mastermind is the financial freedom aspect of it, but it's retirement isn't a goal, it isn't a personal goal, and I'm staunchly opposed on it just based on its lack of merit, in my opinion. Because and my grandfather, he worked until he was 6 months from his deathbed, and he had cancer for 2.5 years before he actually, finally just physically couldn't do it anymore. And he was
Mm.
83 years old when he stopped working. I mean, and he wasn't working the same at 83 as he was when he was 43, but it's a really I don't know. I'm just not a fan of retirement. I am a fan, however, of ideas like that. And I love your big idea. Transitioning here to real quick before we get to the market, and I know we're up against it a little bit, but man, I got to hear just at least touch on you and Joey. What makes that relationship work? Give us a little bit of a background on Joey, how you two met. I don't know if this is even going to be able to be a short story. I really don't care, man. Let's just get it because one of the things I love about you guys is you two together and how fascinating it is to see that it works. So tell me how you met Joey and then what makes it work.
Yeah, he and I were actually friends at church. So we were in the same Sunday school class and had kids roughly the same ages. And he and I share the same brain. We laugh at the same jokes, think about things, and we'll start to text one of another the thing, and another one has already texted it to them. So common. He was in the mortgage industry. We had a mortgage company at the place that I was a financial advisor at. And so I started sending him business. So we grew a tighter relationship around that. And then when I shifted to started teaching people the becoming your own banker strategy, he started coming because he was
Mhm.
hopeful I would send him more referrals. And ultimately he was like, hey, this is something I need in my life. So he became a client for 4 years of mine. And then one day he came to me and said, hey, I think I should be doing this. And I was like, I thought he was talking about like the strategy. I was like, bro, you've been doing it
You're
for four
doing it.
years. I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, no, no, no. I think I should be doing what you're doing and teaching people. And he had been really successful, making $300,000 in his late 20s in the mortgage world, and was highly regarded as kind of the go-to person by all the real estate agents in town. And I thought, man, you sure you want to walk away from something you've been building for the last 10 years? And he said, yeah, I really do. I think has way more impact on it than helping people buy a home. And so he came over and started working with me, and we built the company together, right? Just started teaching people this strategy. And I think, our partnership works really great because I get what I want and he lets me do it. That's what I always tell people. He's very complimentary, just lets me do whatever I want to. And he he
Yeah.
he possesses insights that I for sure don't. Joey's a former valedictorian, like, top
Yeah.
of his class, a very, very smart individual, but very patient for a guy like me who wants to kind of just jump in the car and start going. So we oftentimes refer to him as the brake and me as the gas. And so we do pretty well together.
No, you do. And he's strikingly I think, good at one-on-one relationships in a way that was disarming for me. I mean, I'm a relationship guy, but I view him as a very smart person, and it's amazing as intelligent as he is, that really translates well in his ability to connect individually. And I remember having it was in San Diego in last August, I think. We were in
Mhm.
San Diego and
Yeah.
for a mastermind thing and an intensive or whatever. And we just sat down because he was having a late dinner. I was like, "Well, I've already eaten, but let's hang out, bro." And he's like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And I remember that's when I really connected with him and was like, man, I mean, this guy, he made me feel like I was the most special person in the world. And I'm the guy usually trying to help somebody else do that. And he just flipped the script and, ate his dinner. And I just, all I wanted to do after that was, man, you're my brother. Let's hug. That was Joey, right? And
Yeah.
way smarter than me at the same
Mm.
time, which is just a weird dynamic. So anyway, well, enough about Joey. Let's move into the market. And we'll kind of, there's a lot going on right now. And what do we have? Liberation Day, I think, is what Trump was declaring it. I don't know if you saw the headlines on that.
Uh,
He's using the power of the tariff, as he would call it. It's interesting how the market's reacting. Everybody who voted for him is all going, we knew you were going to do some hard stuff. We just didn't know it was going to get this close to home. That's been my outsider view on the thing. I'm curious what you think first about really just broader the impact of tariffs, how that's going to impact the market, the economy, and I don't know, your business as a result of that.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because I have friends in both camps, and I wouldn't say that I fit directly in one of them. My mentor was an Austrian economist, and the Austrians would say the government should not meddle in any shape or form in the markets. And the reason why we have booms and bust cycles is because of their intervention. The Federal Reserve, in particular, would be the central banking system,
Yeah.
has been the biggest impact in why we have boom and bust cycles. And going back 100 years, the markets had averaged basically a downturn, a recession, depression every 4.5 years. And we haven't had one since 2008, 2009. So we're on this very boom cycle. So and the longest boom bull run had only been 10 years prior to that. So the one camp has always been, in my ears saying, hey, we're due for a bust. We're due for, the bubble to be burst. But yet the government has continued just to insert money, insert money. Well, then tariff concept, they would say tariffs would be bad, right? If we have a
Sure.
tariff, it raises the cost of goods, then that's a dollar that we have to pay more, that dollar can't be used to do something else. The other camp that says, hey, yes, but we're in kind of a financial war, if you will, with China. And if we're a consumer society and they're supplying all of our goods, then now we're subject to them cutting off the supply and
Right.
it being a national security issue. And I definitely see that. And I see the fact that, potentially slave labor, whatever it may be, that they're able to cut prices. And so we have people that are not willing to start businesses because they're like, why should I? I can't compete with the price. And so by increasing the cost in which those cheap goods comes in, it maybe spurs new business. And then AI might be able to then help these people figure out how to do business at a cheaper rate, which I do think. So I think there's a balance somewhere in there. As far as my opinion on the markets, one, I come from it that, we've been due for a correction for a while. It's just, I give the example of basically kids on a sugar high. We've been on a sugar high with all this fake money, pumped in money. The government comes in, they dump a huge bunch of money in different sectors. So what do? They start building, they start creating. Well, then everything that supplies those sectors start building, they start creating, so forth. It just trickles down. But if there's no real demand on the other end of the spectrum, ultimately it all starts to fall apart. And I think that's what's happened is finally it seems like this administration has decided they're not going to put more money in.
Yeah.
Listen to Scott Besness, the Treasury Secretary. We're not going to do that. We're not going to keep pumping money into the system. And obviously you've got Elon and the group doing Doge, right? That's Howard Lutnick that's kind of leading that area as well, saying, hey, we're going to do everything we can to reduce government expenditures, bring down, the money that we're spending. Well, that's going to have short-term impacts. And I
Yeah.
think we're seeing that. We're seeing the short-term impacts of the fear of tariffs, but also, having 25% of the government's workforce cut. And it's going to take time for private sectors to now absorb them and create businesses that those people were doing in low. And I think that that's a good thing, by the way. I think that, it's a tough time, but at the same time, my wife was a dentist, and if you ever been to a dentist, you need to have a tooth pulled. Do you want them to do it over a long period of time, or you want them to just snatch it on out and get it over with? I think that's what we're dealing with. So I am of the opinion that we're probably already in a recession, that we'll probably experience more of the pains over the next 6 to 12 months. But the growth out of it, I believe, will be beneficial, and it will actually be real as compared to what we've experienced is really more of a false reality. I think we've been living in the financial matrix, if you will, for the last 5 to 10 years. I may be wrong, 100% wrong, right? But this is my 2 cents opinion.
No, I mean, that's good. I actually agree with it. Maybe not surprising, but when you think about what's going on in the market, it's a pruning. And pruning, I mean, it looks bare and it hurts, but what you're going to get is healthy growth after that. And so, I mean, scripture is very clear on that in multiple ways, even in the illustration of a father who loves his son, disciplines his son. It's the one that's, not getting the discipline that should be worried. And I think there's a lot of wisdom going on. While it's not perfect, and you mentioned Doge. I mean, I'm a huge fan of what's going on there, as much for the principle behind it as the result, probably more so. And I don't wish anybody not have jobs or anything like that, but some of the absolute waste, fraud, and abuse out of that is mind blowing. And you're right, it is incremental, right? I mean, we have a $36 trillion debt. Even if they come up with $1 trillion, which I think they're probably likely to do, that's 1/36 of the problem. Now,
Right.
Could they sustain that over time? Because you have to stop the bleeding before you can start actually healing. And I think that is the fact that somebody's taking that problem head on and doesn't care about the politics or the PR story behind it is awesome. It's refreshing. It actually makes me proud to be an American in a way I haven't felt as a citizen for a long time. So anyway, but thinking about that, you mentioned something. Let's go back to the AI story. So something that's near and dear to me. We're Petrovibe is an oil and gas development company. So, and we actually have a strategic focus around natural gas. So I'm getting somewhere with this. I want to talk about AI because you and I have a very tight, growing relationship just around that topic, separate but together, right? Maybe the reason that we like what's going on with AI and the huge upsweep and forecast we see in data centers and the energy that's required to run them is exciting for us because natural gas is showing great signs with capital coming back to market. Also with just the demand holding prices at a higher floor, which is what we all really needed. And so our strategy actually is, 60% of what we plan to produce over the next 10 years at Petrovibe is natural gas. So we're pretty excited about that. We like to think we saw that window a little bit before it got here, and now we're in it. So that's been interesting for our business. I want to go back to the AI. So we love AI. I'm using it every day. Tell the folks a little bit about how we came together recently and that whole thing, and then just give us a sort of a snapshot of how AI is playing a role in your life and really as it connected through the mastermind.
Yeah, well, one of the things we do in our mastermind is always trying to figure out what's a way to level up. All of us are business owners, and the greatest and most efficient way to build wealth is by owning an operating company. And when we find technologies that we can adopt that can help us be more efficient, grow those business faster, scale, right? Usually we're using and leveraging human capital, but now with AI, it's given us the ability to use this technology as a leverage tool. So we went and, a group of us went out to Orange County, California, and we got to learn from two experts in the space where they broke it down into a you and me level. We were like implementing. It wasn't like a lecture session. It was like, here's
Workshop.
an idea, go apply it immediately. Here's an idea, go apply it immediately, and using it in our businesses. So I'm an information-based business as a whole. And for me, like it's helping us as a team level up in every interaction. So if you have a business that is interacting with the public and ours is digital, so we get to record every one of our calls and always have, well, now we're able to use AI on the back end of that call, not only to record it, but more importantly, to have every one of those calls ranked and to talk about the things that were missed and to talk about the opportunities of how we can enhance the relationship the next time or go ahead and enhance it immediately by responding and saying, hey, by the way, I heard you, was reviewing the call and I realized that you said this and I didn't respond. Let's talk about that. And for me, that's a huge upgrade for us at every single level with all of our businesses. for us to be able to do that. For podcasting, like we're doing right now, we use AI to help us, shorten our prep time, allow it to help us frame the podcast to be in a, in an interesting manner that maybe we deviate less than we would before. But AI is just a huge tool. I've taught my kids, my son who's 12, my wife, probably to her chagrin, my son loves it. So, I mean, when he comes in, he's going to grab my phone and he's going to start talking to Chat GPT. And next thing I know, I'm going to have, pictures of ligers on my phone. And, like, how does, who wins in a battle, this Avengers person or this person, so like he loves it. He's building out stories as a result of it. And my 15-year-old daughter that we were talking about before, she uses it to be able to write her emails to the places that we're trying to get our vending machines into. So
Yeah.
she's refining her conversations as a result, versus she used to come to me and ask me for all these things because she doesn't know, but now she has my voice. So now she will go to ChatGPT and ask it to respond as if I would have responded to it. So now I have a 15-year-old who's able to be way more efficient. And I just think it's cool. Like it's a great first step, right? What I've learned from
Oh,
AI is that it can do everything and nothing all at the same time.
yeah.
It's our ability to direct it and think in advance of it and throughout it that will make it worthwhile. So if you're not been playing with it, I encourage you to. If you're playing with it, keep improving, the processes within it, and finding ways that it can do the things that normally would take you hours to do. Like I love Excel, but I'm not an Excel formula person. That was
Right.
one of those classes in school. I wish I could go back and actually have paid attention. Well, now I go to ChatGPT and ask it how to do the formula. So now it gives me the formula. So I put it in my spreadsheet, and man, my spreadsheets operate so much more efficiently than they used to.
Amazing.
Yep.
Amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think one of the greatest takeaways I had from the intensive was just use it every day. Like find a way. And to your point, what you said, you talked about efficiency. I find that to be true as well as things that even I know how to do. If I make time to actually figure out how to use AI, I'll still be more efficient by learning the tool to help me do the job more efficiently than if even though I know it in some of those tasks. And the greatest thing for me outside of using it every day is that it helps me think more efficiently and more effectively. It frees my mind so that I can think on the things that really matter more because of some of the things that it's working out as I go along. And so it takes the burden off of some of the grind of thinking, to be honest. And so it's not perfect. I know. I was writing a blog and I always have to like fine tune it. It takes actually a lot more work than most people think because you want to keep your voice, and it has my voice. It knows me. It's got all this stuff, but 3 times I asked it in a row, I need these 3 edits, and it gave me back the exact same deal. So I basically just changed my approach to how to tell it to do by saying the same thing. I basically tricked it, and then all of a sudden I got what I needed. So I don't know. I'm still learning that it's learning, but
Yeah.
I do love the energy draw on it. Just again, as I talked about with us, it's exciting because there's a lot of upside, and power needs fuel, and the greatest fuel source for electric power is natural gas. So,
Yeah, that's super cool.
yeah. Anyway, listen, Russ, this has been awesome. Hey, tell the folks your website. Let's just get a quick spot on your website and where people can go to learn more about your community, actually, and even the mastermind and all that.
Yeah, if you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/fireside, you can access our community. We've got a ton of free resources for you as a result of listening to this podcast. That's kind of the benefit of staying to the end. You get all these free things that we give away. So yeah, go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/fireside. You can join our community if you want to. You can get access to all these free resources, our passive income operating system, our investor DNA. All of these tools live on that page, and love to connect with you in some shape or form.
Russ, thanks so much. This is your host, Peter Snell, CEO of PetroVibe. If you want to learn more about PetroVibe, head over to petrovibe.com. That's PetroVybe, petrovibe.com. So thanks again, Russ.